Welcome, welcome. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solutions. I am here today with Sandra, and we are going to talk about some things that she's been doing to really make changes that are moving her firm in the direction of really being that dream business. So Sandra, thank you so much for joining me today, and would love to have you introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Sandra Norman. I am the owner of Appalachian Bookkeeping Services. I have been working on my own in my own business since 2005. And last fall, within 60 days, I had acquired 70 additional clients and 2 employees, and I was feeling totally overwhelmed, big time growing pains, and decided I needed to reach out, get some help.
And that's what things were like before you and I started talking together when we first met, correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So you went from small firm to quite larger, almost overnight, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I went from 40 clients to 110. Yeah, it was big.
That's almost 3x. That is amazing. And so you decided that you wanted to get some help. What was it that you were looking for as far as help when you first reached out to me?
One of the things that I realized immediately was, in order to pay my employees a living wage, I was going to have to raise my rates. And that was something that I had been quite resistant to, particularly with my legacy clients. And some of these new clients that I acquired, their rates had not been raised in decades. So, and I knew I needed to do it, but it scared me to death because I thought everybody would flee like rats in a sinking ship.
That's very visual. I can see that happening. So I think that raising rates, especially for legacy clients or acquiring new ones that have been in a certain way, status quo for a long time, you definitely don't want to rock the boat now that we're on the ship theme. And so when we go back to your legacy clients, how long have you been maybe thinking about raising their rates, but you just hadn't done it yet?
Oh, wow. For some of them, it had been 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And because of that, did you have your legacy clients at one rate and then your newer clients were at a different rate?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that part of what we talked about was really putting that in place, the whole pricing thing, getting everybody on board. Were there any obstacles that came up that really maybe had you hesitate or think about us working together?
Oh, I knew I needed help. I would have to say the biggest obstacle was convincing myself that my business and I were worth the time and the money. And really, it was more the time, because I was already feeling overwhelmed. And I thought, how in the world am I going to carve out time for coaching when I'm already overwhelmed? But I just knew that it was something that I had to do, particularly after we had our first conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I think that what you're talking about, where you're working too many hours and it's not showing up in your bank account, is what I call an upper limit challenge. You can't grow your revenues because you have no more time to give. You're maxed out. And how did you kind of shift your thinking on what made it okay for you to realize that, yes, I'm busy, but I need to make time for this also?
I felt in our first conversation, I felt like you were the right fit for me. And I felt like you were hearing me and understanding where I was at. And you had plenty of experience with helping people like me to get over those fears, particularly about raising rates. And I knew by the end of our conversation that it was something that I had to do, and I would make the time.
Perfect. And I believe that you are the absolute best investment you can make in yourself. So I really want to acknowledge you for doing that when there might have been a lot of internal resistance. So let's kind of get into the steps of what you've done to be able to take away that upper limit challenge where you've been growing your bank account and we're working on freeing up your time. So what are some of the things that you've done to make that happen?
Well, the first thing that I recall that you and I worked on was figuring out my ideal client, and then so that I would have a better idea of how to identify that particular business or that particular person when they would approach me to provide bookkeeping services for them. And then there was the creating the different packages and the different levels, and going over my current client list and figuring out who I could slot into which packages.
Okay, great. So part of what I'm hearing is there were three main things for you: is really understanding who your ideal clients were, because you had a wide range of clients, especially with the ones that you recently acquired, and some were low value, some were high value. And we really wanted to differentiate and figure out what makes someone a high value client. The other thing was to be able to separate your fees from time by packaging or bundling your services together. And then you were given some homework to grade your clients, similar to school grades, A, B, C, D, F. When you went through that, anything that you noticed or realized because of doing that particular homework?
I was surprised by the number of A clients I had. I really was. I felt like there would be more who I would feel weren't as good of a fit as they could be. And when I went through that grading process, and I also had my 2 employees grade them as well, we came up with very similar grades, and there were some that stood out that we just needed to encourage to find somewhere else to go have their bookkeeping services provided for them, that they just were not a good fit. And that ended up being a whole lot easier than I thought it would be. I guess because all 3 of us were in consensus on it. So I knew it wasn't just me thinking, oh, this person irritates me. It was this person is definitely not a good fit, and will be better served elsewhere.
I think that what I want to highlight with what you're saying is that there's some people that you were serving that you tolerated for a really, really long time. And it was a matter of having that conversation with your staff and everybody getting on the same page, that you were able to really take those next steps and have some of them move on.
Exactly.
So now that you have gotten rid of some of those headache clients, what have you noticed as far as your staff and how that is for them as far as their workflow goes?
They were hugely relieved. And I definitely felt, I guess I would say maybe an increase in loyalty, because I was, I had their back and I heard them, and I made a point to say this, we don't want to be tolerating people. We want to be enjoying people. And we're here 8 hours a day. We need to be enjoying what we're doing and who we're working with.
So, Sandra, as you know, in our community, one of the things I love is when you start to lower your tolerance level. So you've been starting to be less tolerant of non-ideal clients and low rates. So kudos to you for doing that. And I think that what you also mentioned is so important, is that when you make a change like this, especially letting go of some of those headache clients, your staff realizes that you actually value them. You don't take them for granted. And as we know, finding really those right people to work with you and be in your business is so challenging these days. So if you can do something like that, it really creates staff loyalty beyond the obvious.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to hear a little bit about analyzing, quoting projects for value instead of time. What are some of the things that you've been changing as far as that goes, and how you look at pricing something?
I particularly enjoy cleaning up messes, and I just find it challenging. And I realized that when I was charging by the hour, I was giving away a lot of service. And I was also not always remembering to keep track of how many hours I would spend. So what I've learned to do is do a diagnostic, take a look at things, see what the project is going to entail. And then I really don't even think anymore about, well, I wonder how many hours this is going to take me. I just have decided that I am going to price a cleanup at a certain price point, depending on how many accounts or how large of a business it is. And astonishingly have gotten no pushback whatsoever on that. It feels great. Now, I mean, I've always enjoyed cleanups, but now I really enjoy them because I like seeing that money. So that's great.
Okay. Before you were giving away some services, you weren't always charging for all the hours you worked, which lowered your profit margin. By doing the diagnostic, can you explain a little bit more about the diagnostic that we put into place for you?
What we discussed and you encouraged me to do was to charge a flat $500 for a diagnostic, which meant going in, whether it was QuickBooks Online or a QuickBooks desktop file, and really looking at what was going on and what the problems were, and making a list, just like you would if you had a funny noise in your car and you took it to the garage and they hooked it up to all their wonderful little computerized machines and could tell you that, oh, it's your catalytic converter or whatever. And so again, I was surprised that people were willing to pay that fee. And I was surprised at how much it helped me to then figure out, okay, how much do I need to charge for this cleanup? And again, I was shocked that when I would say this is what it's going to cost, I wasn't getting any sort of argument about it. And I knew what I was getting myself into, which was great.
Mm-hmm. And by doing the diagnostic, first of all, you created a new stream of revenue.
Right.
And by doing that, taking that time to really understand what's going on in their financials, it took away some of the frustrations of a project being more complicated than you expected, and then also underpricing the project. So is there an example of maybe a recent one that you took on going through this process, and maybe what you originally would have charged and what you ended up charging for that project? Do you mind sharing that? Because I love hearing about the numbers.
I don't mind. Well, first of all, I wouldn't have charged for the diagnostic. I would have said, well, send me some bank statements. Let me look at your file, and I'll give you a general idea of how many hours I think it'll take me and what that'll cost. So I would have to say that, well, first of all, I would have been out the $500. Mm-hmm. And on the most recent one that I took on, I ended up charging about $2,500, and I would have probably made in the past maybe $750 to $850. So
that's a 3x increase.
Absolutely.
No additional time spent working, right?
Oh no.
Mm-mm. And when you quoted the $2,500 to this client, what was the response?
Okay, if that's what it takes.
That is fantastic. And
I know.
So
I wanted to
be totally worth celebrating right there. And
I
know that you're also inspiring someone else, that if you could do this, that person can do it in their firm too. So really, thanks for letting me just unpack those numbers. But okay, so now we understand how it works with the diagnostic for the cleanups before you go into that, so you can price it accurately. And then the other thing that you've been doing is going back to your current clients and adjusting their fees. So what's that been like for you? What's been your experience around that?
That was another surprising experience where the vast majority, I would say 3/4 of the clients that I have so far adjusted have not even batted an eyelash, just said, okay, that sounds good. And I increased some of them by 50%, some by 30%. And I had a lot of trepidation about that. I literally expected my phone to blow up, and that didn't happen. I had 2 clients who pushed back, and they were pretty low value clients, and I held my guns and stuck to it, and they ended up getting on board.
That is pretty amazing. So with some of those, maybe one of those 2 low value clients, where were they at monthly and what did they move up to?
One of them was at, they're a nonprofit. So I usually cut them nonprofits a little bit of a break. So one of them was at about 150, 160, depending on the time, because I was charging by the hour at that point. And they're now at 250. And it's not taking me any more time, of course. I knew what I was getting into. The other one, I believe, was at about the same, about 160. I think they were at 160, and I raised them to 250.
Okay, great. So you were able to give them maybe like an 80% increase in fees, and there was no pushback from them. Great. But with the others, you averaged about 30 to 50% more, and most of them were okay with that. Yeah,
I believe there was one who questioned me slightly, but when I explained that I hadn't raised his rates in 5 years and that inflation had increased and all the other reasons, he said, yeah, you're right. And it was much easier than I thought it was going to be.
So because that we've seen your bottom line increase without any additional work or having to add staff or anything like that, you actually have less clients now than you had when we first started. So has your monthly revenues increased even though you're working with less clients right now?
Yeah, I believe that so far I have raised rates on 10 of the legacy clients. I have switched any new clients to a flat monthly package fee. So just on the legacy clients, my increase has been about $1,500 a month. And on the new people, wow, I can't even guess. I mean, it's got to be, I would have to say the increase in revenue from what I would have charged versus what I'm charging now is probably $2,000 or $3,000 a month.
Okay, so just with what you're telling me is that off the top of my head, and I don't always do math really well when I'm in an interview with somebody, but if we brought in like another maybe $50,000 a year into your firm, just with those things right off the top of your head, the rough calculations. Nice. That is fantastic. I always get excited and want to celebrate those things. So anything else that you can share that you've done to maybe fine tune your system and continue to grow your revenues?
Well, because of the exercise that we did about the ideal client, I have actually turned some work away, which in the past I probably would not have done. Particularly now that I have employees and payroll and other people's livelihoods that are my responsibility. Anybody with a pulse and a checkbook, I probably would have accepted as a client, but I've gotten a lot pickier. Or maybe more particular. And I think that's in their best interest as well as in mine and my employees.
Okay. So now you're starting to be more specific about who you are onboarding. You're not saying yes to anybody who's willing to pay your monthly fees. Are there any other maybe hurdles that you faced as we've been going through this that you had to kind of like get out of your own way?
I definitely have realized that my value to the firm is in doing the more intricate cleanup type work and to delegate the daily general bookkeeping to my staff. That I need the extra time that allows me to not only bring in more clients, but to do the kind of work that brings in more higher dollar revenue.
So one of the things that I love is I think that cleanup projects can be highly, highly profitable. I look at turning them into your personal ATM machine. It sounds like we're on the same page as that. But the other part that I'm hearing is that you've been able to really reallocate your time to really focus on where your highest value is. And the things that maybe you don't enjoy doing as much, or somebody that works for you can do better, you've been able to get off your plate and pass on to somebody else. So you're really optimizing your staff. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then it sounds like you've also been able to free up time to do more business development, working on your business, not only in your business.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And what have you noticed, because you're spending more time on where you have your highest value, and you've also been able to work more on your business? Anything else that's come out of that?
I definitely feel that as I said, I'm getting I'm focusing more on the higher value clients, that I'm enjoying working with them more because of that. They're just a better fit. I now have in my head who is an ideal client, and I notice those things as we're going through our initial consultation and our talk. And I look forward to, there was actually a time where I would get an email or I would get a voicemail from someone looking for bookkeeping services, and I wouldn't really even want to have to respond because I didn't want to have to deal with it. And I'm actually looking forward to dealing with it now and meeting these new potential clients, and seeing what we can do to help them out, and how that can work for us as well.
Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, you were mentioning that you were at capacity as far as your time goes. So because you've been transitioning away from working with everybody and raising your rates with your current clients as well as new clients, anything else that you've seen as far as a change in your life, your personal life, as well as professionally for you?
Well, I have managed for the most part to be able to take Fridays off, which is something I have wanted to do for years and could not quite make happen. And that has been wonderful to have a 3-day weekend. It's just fabulous. So yeah, that's probably been one of the highlights. That and the extra money. Definitely.
The extra money is always nice, but it's that you now can enjoy the extra money also.
Exactly.
And because you're taking Fridays off, are you still working the same amount of hours each week, or have you cut back on how many hours you're working?
I've cut back on the number of hours as well. Yeah.
So about how many hours were you working before, and how many hours a week do you work on average now?
Excluding January, I would say 50 to 60 before, and I would say now it's somewhere between 35 and 45.
Fantastic. That is where you're putting yourself really on that path to a dream business. And I know that you've done some traveling, you've taken some time off, and it didn't affect your revenues at all.
Nope, it was great.
So part of what I love, and as you know, I get behind, is it's not just about increasing your revenues, but it's that by having a firm owner, you take so many risks of having a business that we're getting to raise your quality of life. And that is the part that I love really celebrating.
Yeah, that's been great. To be able to take a vacation and actually enjoy it, it's been wonderful.
Yep, absolutely. So anything else that you wanted to mention that we haven't touched on?
I would have to say, when I initially was looking for a coach and thinking about coaching, I thought that, as I had mentioned earlier, that I was worried about the time, but the amount of time that I would have to put into it. And I really thought that what would end up happening is that I would have like homework, and I would dread the coaching calls, and I would dread the homework. And what's ended up happening is I look forward to the coaching calls. I always feel really energized and pumped up and motivated at the end of the calls. And having a coach has given me confidence and a certain level of self-esteem that I guess I didn't have before. I really didn't think I was worth as much as I've been able to raise my rates to and charge people. And now I do feel like, yeah, what we do is very valuable, and we're earning every penny of it, and it feels great. I don't feel like I have to make excuses about why I'm charging what I'm charging. Yet I know that there's good value for the clients in what we're doing.
And I know that my place, and we talked about it when we were first meeting, is that I don't really give homework because I know you're already busy and I want you to have your free time. So we tend to do a lot of the work together so that by the time that our session is over, it's one and done and you can just move forward with things.
Exactly. Right. Like the template letters that you had created for me to announce the new package prices and the flat fees. Eve, I even asked you about I call it the Dear John letter that I send to the clients that I'm letting go. And so that was wonderful. I didn't have to sit there and, dwell on how to word this just right. It's all the tools that you have given me have been ready to go. All I have to do is pick it up and run with it. And that's been great.
Yep. Why make it difficult when it can be easy?
Exactly.
Anyway, Sandra, if somebody was inspired by your conversation, wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Oh, definitely my email. Yeah.
Would you like to share that?
Sure. Yeah. It's Sandra at appbookserv.com.
Excellent. Sandra, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me, have this conversation. I know that your journey is inspiring someone else who's been thinking about it. They're ready to go. And you hopefully are giving them the momentum that if it's possible for you, that's possible for them too. Really appreciate that.
That would be great. I would love that.
Excellent. Lauren Fogelman, showing accounting professionals how to double their income, working half the time.